Hello everybody, so today we are going to be covering lessons in chapter 13 and I really recommend that you guys go ahead and follow the chapter 14 section and do the extra credit for this week. I think that it's a good idea to do both extra credits, but chapter 14 we're not going to be covering a lot of the tools used in that, so I think that it's a good idea for you to go ahead and go through that. Alright, so this week what we need to do is use the frame tool. We need to create multiple artboards for multiple screen sizes. So we're going to make just multiple canvas sizes essentially. We're going to be using groups, which I think that some of you are probably familiar with already, but I want to just double check. And then we're going to be using guides and also grids this week. Alright, let's get started. So this week, I think for our Maidel Lopez inspiration, I think some of these sections will be interesting. There's a lot of horizontal lines that I'm seeing in a lot of these, and I think that those would be interesting to incorporate. As well as I think that we could do maybe something with a lot of cool gradient overlays. I have one other tool that I think that you'll like, so let's get started on that. I've already created a new canvas. It's the 8x10, just like we've been doing. And first, let me show you how to turn on guides. So we're going to go up to the top and choose View. And here is Guides. And we can add a new guide or create a new guide layout. The other option is to turn on rulers. That's by pressing Ctrl R or Command R on a Mac. And then we can drag out from the top to create our guides. And then we can do that vertically or horizontally, and you can place them wherever you need them. And to get rid of them, you just drag them off the screen. You can also say View, Guides, and Clear Canvas Guides. Let's create a guide layout. So here we can go to Guides, New Guide Layout. Oh, I see. Here we go. So we have a few different options that it gives us by default. If you wanted to set up something with specifically 8 columns or any of these presets. You can also create your own presets down here, but we're going to go for custom. So what we're going to do is, let's set to default first and then custom. So what we're going to do is let's make 8 columns and let's turn on rows. Let's go ahead and make maybe 4 rows. That doesn't look good to me. Let's try 4 columns and 8 rows actually. Yeah, that looks better. And then I also want to create margins. So that's just going to give me a border. And let's make it a 1/2 inch border. And let's copy that all across. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. We can also say center the columns. They should be already, but we can just choose to do that. And then if you had guides pop up beforehand, or if you had dragged out a few guides, you might choose to clear the existing guides when putting on this new guide layout. Alright, so now we have our guides. If you want to hide them, you can press Ctrl H and you can toggle that on and off. That's Command H on a Mac. And if I'm dragging things out, so let's use the marquee tool for example, it's going to try to snap to those guides, which is excellent, very helpful for us. And we're actually going to choose the frame tool this time. So we have 2 options. We have a circular frame tool and a square frame tool. And what this does is allows us to put placeholders for images to be dragged into our canvas. So we can create a few of those. Let's go for 4 for now. And then I've downloaded some images from Pexels. I was going for a space theme today, so what I'd like to do is set a gradient for the background. Let's go to the gradient tool. And I think what I'd like to do is something kind of like this image down here, and I can see that there's a few different spaces where he has these different gradients, so I think I'd like to try to add a few more this time. Let's add in an orange one. Let's add it in multiple layers. And then we can add a mask. And we can also use black and white to create a gradient that will block out some of our area. Because remember, it's only painting in black and white and shades of gray. And so if we use a fuzzy brush, it's going to paint with that fuzzy brush almost. So let's switch it. So you can see that even though I'm using the mask, it's painting in that fuzzed edge. And the gradients work just the same as that. So as long as you're using a black and white gradient, which we are, or we could go back to our basic, and that's going to create a gradient in our mask as well. So I would like to switch it, create something, let's go for something like that, yeah. And then we can switch it so that we have the opacity showing, so it's an opacity gradient, so that we can add in more areas of white space, visible space. And let's keep going with that. I want to add in some of that blue. So let's just choose this one. And this is set to that opacity gradient still. Okay, it's getting a little muddy. I'm going to merge that down with Control E, Command E on a Mac. And let's hide our grid for a little bit and just play with this until it looks good. to filter and choose blur and Gaussian blur. And then let's make that just to fuzz that out a little bit more. And then maybe I'll do Control U or Command U if you're on a Mac to change that up a little bit. I think I'm liking what we had before actually. Let's keep going with that a bit more. Okay, I like that. Alright, so let's turn our frames and our guides back on. And actually, let's get rid of these. And I want to change my guide layout to be a little bit less tight. So we'll do a new guide layout. Here I have clear existing guides checked on. And I think what I'd like is maybe something like 3 by 3. Let's make this a little bit higher. Yeah, something like these squares looks a little bit nicer. And I think I want the gutters to be a little bit bigger too. Yeah, that looks good to me. Alright, so let's drag in some frames. Now in those frames, I want to drag out some of my pictures. So if I hide the guides, you can see that my pictures are coming in pretty well, and you can see that they're fitting into that section that it's already allocated for them. So even though these were not perfectly aligned, perfectly sized images, they're coming in already prepared for the height that they need to be. Let's drag in a couple more. Okay, I went through and added some more photos, and you can see, so with all of my photos, if I were to double click, you can see the frame of the image, and I can move that around and say I'd actually like it to be more in this area, or I can double click and move it around, and it's not affecting the frame itself, which can be really helpful. And if I were to say like, I don't want this picture anymore, and I want this frame to extend over to where this other one was, I could do that, and then I could double click on my, double click on my image, and Control T to make that editable, make that larger, and then I could have some really interesting changes. And it's nice because I'm still working on that grid the whole time. So let's go back to this frame tool, click on my frame, say I'd like to align it to here, double click, Control T for free transform. Oops, on the wrong one. Control T for free transform, make that larger. Now we have some interesting patterns happening, some kind of cool bricks. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to show you how to group everything. So let's click on the top layer, the top frame, hold shift and click the bottom of all of our frames, and you can press Ctrl G for group to group it. The other option is to click the icon next to the new images tab, and that's also going to group it. And we can double click on that and rename it, so we'll call it photos. And then here, right now it's set to pass through, but we can change what we want that blending mode set to for everything inside of here. And you guys might be pretty familiar with this by now, but just in case we didn't go over it, I wanted to make sure you guys heard it. So I think hard light looks really interesting. We've got a lot of these bright colors, and it's working with our gradient really well. And then the next thing I want to do is drag in a photo of an astronaut, and then I'm going to select her out of the picture. Give it just a second. And I'll mask her out. And for me, I'd like her to be just a little bit to the left of that. And I wanted to show you guys how to use the gradient map tool as well. You don't have to do this for the assignment, it's not a requirement, but I do think it would be interesting to see. So let's go into the adjustments tab. I'm going to choose gradient map right here. And what that does automatically is anything that was light on its spectrum, it's going to move anything over there to white, and anything that was dark on its brightness spectrum, it's going to move to black. So right now, that's fine if we wanted to make something black and white, but that's not what I want to do only. So first I'm going to clip it to just my astronaut. And I think I also want to lower the opacity a little bit of those photos. Let's go to 40%, I think. So that she pops out quite a bit. And then let's click on our gradient map and double click on our gradient. And let's change these stops. And so you can see anything that was in shadow is going to be going to black, and anything halfway in gray is going to be in this gray zone, and anything that was in pure white will go to white. So if I wanted to change that so that anything that was purely white is red, and then hue or like variations of red up to that, you could do that. Same for the other side. What if we wanted it to be all blue on the other side? And that's kind of hard to look at, but that's kind of how this is working. So now let's go through, and I want to choose purples. And this is going to be my starting point. And I want to move it around so that we get a really nice additional color balance going on with her. So let's push things around until it looks really nice. And generally I want to try to organize these so that the kind of visually darkest color is on the left and the visually brightest color is on the right, to line up with those darks and lights. That's what's going to have the easiest read. And then you can mess with these, the order of these, to make them feel more natural. And then we have a really cool transition from the darks to the purples, or sorry, the background to the astronaut going on in here. So let me just keep messing with that for a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty neat to me. The next thing that I'd like to do, I'm going to go into my photos group and choose to add a drop shadow. Actually, let's change that. Instead of a drop shadow, let's do an inner shadow. And you can see that it's affecting all of my photos right now. do a stroke as well. Maybe I won't actually. I don't think I like that. Let's try this outer glow. There it is. Oh, we had that set really high for something. I think that looks pretty nice. Let's turn the opacity up just a little bit higher. Maybe go for 50. And then for our astronaut, let's give her a drop shadow. Let's set it to this purple. Okay, and then maybe we'll give her a stroke as well. That actually looks kind of neat and graphic. I wasn't expecting that. I like that. That looks good. Okay. Alright, so now we've done almost everything. So we've used the frame tool, we've used groups, we've used guides. Now let's make this work for multiple artboards. Let's copy the stroke to copy layer style, paste layer style. Ooh, wrong thing. Yeah, okay. So to do multiple artboards, let's group all of this together, Control G, and that'll be Command G if you are using a Mac. And let's call this poster. Alright, so first thing I want to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say artboard from group. And it's going to make an artboard the size of my piece. It looks like it's using all of the images in here to kind of stretch that out. So we need to shrink that down just a little. So our artboard tool is going to be here behind our move tool. And instead of 8 by 10.68, let's change that to 0. And it's going to shrink that down for us. Let's click on this plus sign right here. And it's going to add a new artboard for us. And I want to change that size to be, let's go for Android 1080p. That's going to give us a small phone size. Maybe we can do one more and choose, let's say web most common, and let's rotate that. And this is a lot smaller. We could go for web large even. This is a lot smaller. It's actually the same as this size, but just rotated to its side. And the reason for that is that web picture is typically using 72 ppi, pixels per inch, instead of 300 like we usually do. So now we can design for mobile and for web at the same time. So let's double click these new artboard layers and rename them. We'll call that mobile, we'll call that web. And then with all of that, let's switch back to our move tool. And I want to grab all of my layers here again, Control G to group them. We'll call that poster again, and let's copy that and paste it with the mobile tab selected. And so we can move that around to whatever makes sense for us. Maybe it looks better centered on mobile. I think it would. Let's move. Something like that looks pretty neat. Maybe we don't want it to fall off of the top. And let's grow it just a hair. There we go. Okay, and then I want to move my astronaut just a hair. And with that, so let's call this assets instead, or content. All right, with that, we can make any changes to this artboard separately from the original artboard. We can also add guides to that. So we can say view, guides, new guide layout. And this is going to follow just for this piece. So let's say we want it on just our mobile. And we want to say that we want, maybe we want 9 columns, or we just want 2 columns with a 1/2 inch gutter in the middle. We don't want our margins anymore. And let's see what else we could do. I think I don't want margins because it is on a phone screen. And then let's say we want 3 rows going up. And we want a 1/2 inch in between all of those. Okay. So with that, it's going to show us our new guides on here. And you can use the guides from the other one as well. And I'll explain that alignment there. And that's not always necessary. It's not always helpful, but you can use it if it is. Let's go back to the poster. And let's change the guides. And we can say, let's say clear selected artboard guides. And then let's go to view, guides, and new guide layout. Let's change it so that it's just on our poster. And we'll click OK. Okay, now that we have all of that, we can use our frame tool to rearrange things so that it will follow our guides again. So we could choose to move these images that we had over to fit these new guides. We have all of our effects applied to our group, so maybe we want to remove the stroke. Let's go to this one. We can scooch that frame over. And we can do this all with our frame now, and it's not affecting the picture that was underneath it. So all of this resizing can be really helpful in that way. Okay, and then lastly we have this web view, and for your homework you can choose any. I'd like you to have 3 different sizes for your artboards, but you can choose any presets, or you could create your own, I suppose. Let's copy the assets from the mobile, and actually let's copy the assets from the poster and paste it onto the web. Control C and Control V. And let's hide the mobile and the poster view. Okay, and let's move some of these around. A great idea for this project might be to include in all of your frames your previous posters from all of the semester. Let's take these and move all of them up. Guide layout. I'm going to say clear canvas guides for this one as well. And I think we had 4 and 3 originally. Let's swap that so that we have 3 and 4 for this longer view. That's too much of a gutter. Here in this section, you don't have to type the decimal amount that it is. So if we wanted 1/8 of an inch, we can do that, and Photoshop will be able to pull that up for us, which is really helpful. Let's add margins for this one. 0.25. Okay. Okay. My background got squished a little bit. And my artboard got moved around just a smidge. Okay, so here we have a few different versions of the same piece, but resized for different artboard sizes, different views. make sure my background color extends to all the edges. That might just be a glitch from being zoomed out really far. Alright, the last thing I want to show you is how to export each of these. So you can go to File, Export, and then Artboards to Files. It's going to pop this up, and we'll drop it on the desktop, and we'll name it first name, last name, dash week 7, dash poster number 7. Ooh, and we forgot to add our text, so we'll go back and do that. Alright, so we can say that we want to export them as PSDs, and that's going to maintain all of our layers for each version. And then this is our prefix, which means we want to put a dash space on the end, maybe, so that each time it's going to export, it'll save it as our artboard title. So poster, mobile, and web is how it'll export it. So let's put it on the desktop, and let's add its own folder even. So we'll say new folder, artboards. Okay, just so that we can see all of them together. And we're going to click on run, and it'll take a second, so give it just a moment to do its thing. Okay, it says it was successful. We'll click OK. And now let's open up my folder, and here is how it named it. So it came in and it said that each of these are their own file now for web, poster, and mobile. And then if we wanted to add our text, so it will not be due on Sunday, it will be due on the last day of class, which I believe is Wednesday. Alrighty, thank you guys, see you in the next one.